Hi! So, I've been doing ranking videos for Pokemon Fire Red Leaf Green for a bit over 2 months. And so far, I've released 2 rankings, one for the Bug type and one for the Fighting type. But while going through some of the results for the fights and all recordings, I realized that there were some details that didn't sit well with me, mostly in terms of movesets. So in this video, I'm going to go through some moves that I'm not going to allow anymore, some moves that I ignored and decided to try again, and some moves that I straight up forgot existed. And then when I'm done, I'm going to update the scores for the Pokemon. Note that this is most probably going to spoil the results for the previous videos. So if you haven't watched them, a lot of parts of this video aren't going to make sense. So this is your warning to cut the video and watch the others if you haven't. Also, if you just want to skip to see how the score of the Pokemon are going to change, there should be a timestamp in the description with the time of when I talk about it. Okay, so for starters, let's go over the moves that I'm banning. The first is Return. Obtained south of Lavender Town after Lieutenant Surge, this move is 102 base power at Max Friendship and every Pokemon can learn it with the exception of Pokemon like Caterpie and Magikarp. Before, I used to immediately give it to everyone when they reached that point. But the thing that bothered me was the friendship factor. Because yes, you can technically get it to max power right off the bat. But who's going to actually do it without hacking the game? That's why I decided to ban it. As a side note, I still don't know how I'm going to deal with friendship evolutions in Emerald, but that's going to be an issue for the future. In its place, there's another normal type move that almost every Pokemon can learn. Secret Power. It's obtained after the rival fight on Nugget Bridge and it's 70 base power. It also has an added effect depending on the terrain, but for the important fights, it's mostly going to be a 30% chance of paralysis, which was a bit frustrating for testing since it made fights inconsistent. Other normal type moves that are more limited in the amount of Pokemon that can learn them, but that were stronger than Secret Power, were Strength, Mega Punch, Body Slam, Crush Claw, Hyper Fang, Hyper Voice, Slash, and Try Attack, with 2 more that I'm going to talk about later. This change made it so that a lot of Pokemon no longer had a strong neutral move to use against Pokemon that resisted their stab moves, now having to rely on other options and making their movesets a bit more diverse. The second move is more of a combination, and that's both Substitute and Protect, and it was mostly used for the fight against Blaine, making his Pokemon run out of power points for Fire Blast and sometimes giving the chance to use setup moves. This was just scummy, and it allowed for some bug types that had nothing to do in that fight to somehow be able to sweep. I'm still allowing both Substitute and Protect, but not at the same time, since I could just try that for every fight and try to sweep with a setup move plus leftovers recovery or a regular move plus rest. As for the moves that I purposefully ignored, they were the special moves on both the Machamp line, the Mankey line, and Hitmonchan. Considering their high physical attack, I just didn't think they were worth it. And after testing them, I was mostly right. The only one that made a difference was both Flamethrower and Fire Blast on the Machamp line, since because I banned Return, they didn't have much for the grass types, so it came in handy for those battles. Finally, for the moves that I straight up forgot they existed, there's the weather moves Rain Dance and Sunny Day, Double Edge, and Hyper Beam. First, with the weather moves, I tried them to either reduce damage or boost the power of moves. However, the damage reduction and boost weren't that noticeable since I needed a turn of setup. For Double Edge, it helped only in a handful of individual fights, as it's only available after reaching the end of Victory Road, and the recoil damage was just too big of a cost for the increase in power. Finally, there's Hyper Beam, and this one was really helpful for the fully evolved Pokemon, especially the fighting types, as it gave them enough damage to KO the rival Alakazam and some other Pokemon that needed a bit more power to be defeated thanks to no longer having Return. On a side note, Hyper Beam is supposed to be a move exclusive to the fully evolved Pokemon, with the exception of the Ratini line in Gen 1. But there's actually 5 fully evolved Pokemon in this game that are not able to learn this move. Those are Ditto, which makes sense, Farfetch, which I guess makes sense since it's a small bird, even though there's stuff like Butterfree that learn it, both Hitmonchan and Hitmonlee, which would make sense since they're supposed to be more realistic fighters, but then there's Machamp that learns Flamethrower and Primeape that learns both Thunder and Overheat, and finally Onix, which is like, why? Like he already struggles enough by being worse than Golem, Rhydon, and arguably Graveler. Why not give him Hyper Beam? Freaking Raticate and Arbok get Hyper Beam. Why not on it? Anyways, those are the changes that I'm making to the ranking. Now, how is this going to affect the Pokemon? Let's start with the Pokemon that gained points. This is because of some mistakes that I made or new movesets that made the Pokemon better. And there's only one, which is Paras. He gained a point by now beating Erika's Pictubel, the rival's Growlithe on Pokemon Tower, and the rival's Alakazam as a champion, while also now being defeated by the rival's Pidgeotto on Pokemon Tower. As for the Pokemon that had no change in their score, they are Caterpie, Metapod, Weedle, Kakuna, and somehow Butterfree. The first four are expected since they cannot learn TMs, but Butterfree really surprised me. The thing is, he never had the need to use any of the moves that I banned, and the new moves actually made him worse, so he retains his score of over 90. Going to the ones that had small changes, Machamp lost almost a point, Machoke lost a bit over 2 points, Machamp lost less than a point, Poliwrath lost a point and a half, Venomoth lost almost half a point, Parasect lost almost a point, Beedrill lost almost a point, and Pinsir lost a point and a half. These ones and the ones going forward are mostly because of the banning of Return. Also, something that I want to note is that Pinsir was the only bug type that used the strategy of Protect plus Substitute before and was still able to beat Blaine. For the ones that had bigger changes, there's Primeape and Scyther, with Primeape now missing on 5 sweeps and 2 individual fights, making him lose 8 points and a half, and Scyther missing a sweep and 6 individual fights, making him lose almost 4 points. Now, if you've noticed, there's a couple of Pokemon that I haven't mentioned, and that's because they lost enough points to make them go down in the ranking. Those are Mankey, Hitmonchan, Hitmonlee, and Venomoth. Mankey lost over 5 points, putting him now lower than Machoke. Hitmonchan lost over 10 points, now being lower than Poliwrath. Hitmonlee lost over 11 points, now being lower than both Machamp and Poliwrath. And Venomoth lost almost 7 points, putting him lower than Parasect. Hitmonchan and Hitmonlee were the fighting types that suffered the most from losing Return. Add to that they cannot learn Hyper Beam, and that made them struggle a lot against the Psychic types. For Venomoth, losing Protect plus Substitute was a huge hit, but also losing Return made him the one that lost the most among the bug types from this change. Also, yes, I noticed that making this change means that the shorts I've made saying that certain Pokemon are the worst are now invalid. Leave me alone. Anyways, that's it for this video. Moving forward, I'm going to go with these changes, so I won't be mentioning them again. I'll also update the Google Doc and link it to this video for reference. Finally, this isn't going to be the video of the month. That one is going up next week and it's going to be about the fire types. Anyways, that's all I have for now. See ya!